There are so many classic indie games out there. Some get the praise they deserve, while others are overlooked due to the flood of titles being released. When those of great quality are recognized, they have a cultural impact on the indie scene that stands out as an influence on the games created in the future. Whether it was a huge success or something that had a strong cult fan base following around it, these games made an impact, and here are 10 selections that serve as excellent examples. This is Volume 5 of the greatest indie games of all time. But before that, why don't you set a good example for truthful gaming media? Head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. You'll gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every single video we produce, and even free games depending on your tier. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Also, be sure to say hello to Nia over at twitch.tv/idreamofindiegames, where she streams the hottest indie releases every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. See you there. Up first, we have a true spooky classic, Signalis. Signalis is inspired by old-school survival horror games and takes a fresh approach with modern gameplay elements and a strong atmosphere set in a dystopian sci-fi setting. Developed by Rose Engine and published by Humble Games and Playism, it takes visual inspiration from the low-res polygons of the 32-bit games that popularized the survival horror genre, but with a much cleaner look. This gives the game a feel that is both raw and gritty while simultaneously being eerie and atmospheric. Players will take control of Elster, who's a type of android with human neural imprints known as a replica. In the world in which the story takes place, replicas are put to work by partnering with a human that will give them commands who is given the title of a Gestalt. After a scout shuttle crashes, Elster awakens and sets off to find her missing Gestalt named Ariane. Her search leads her to a nearby mining facility where she discovers things have taken a terrible turn, with most of the Gestalt staff having been killed and the replicas having degenerated both physically and mentally, looking like something that is neither fully human or machine and acting like feral animals who will attack on sight. While set in a futuristic sci-fi setting, there are quotes from and references to the supernatural horror works of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert W. Chambers that serve as psychological symbolism of the madness and chaos that are rising in the story as the situation continues to get worse. Signalis is an interesting modern take on old-school survival horror in both presentation and gameplay, and it deserves its place as one of the most popular indie horror games in recent years. It's available digitally on PC, Switch, PS4, Xbox One for $19.99, and physically on the Switch for $29.99. PS4, you can grab it for $37.95. Up next is Crosscode, an indie action RPG set in a virtual MMORPG named Crossworlds that is located in a physical area where artificial humanoids called avatars are controlled remotely by players. Developed by Radical Fish Games and published by Deck 13, Whisper Games, Dangan, and Mayflower, players will control Leah, a mysterious avatar who has lost her memory and lacks the ability to sleep. She's informed that she will be able to regain her memories through playing Crossworlds, so she sets off to venture into the game in an effort to discover who she is, why she's in the game, and why there are powerful avatars trying to find her. The gameplay focuses on puzzle solving, combat, and exploration in a 2D top-down format with pixel art graphics. Leah can use both ranged and melee attacks that play just as much of a role in solving puzzles as they do in combat. Party members can also be recruited to join your adventure, and they will be controlled by AI to assist you in combat. While indie RPGs do get a bit of an unfair reputation for trying too hard to appeal to the nostalgia from retro games, there are some games and even a few popular ones that are guilty of doing so, and Crosscode is the exact opposite of that approach. The visual element does have a strong retro appeal, but it is done with finesse and doesn't attempt to copy the visual style of any game from the past. The gameplay has a very modern feel to it that implements elements from twin-stick shooters, and the fast-paced combat is very smooth and engaging. Crosscode stands out in the world of indie RPGs with its strong individual identity and delivers quality on all levels. It looks, sounds, and plays beautifully, and the characters and story are intriguing in a way that will have you eager to find out what happens next and to discover what's really going on in this place that combines physical and virtual reality. If you're into indie RPGs or action RPGs in general, then Crosscode is a must-play. It's available digitally on PC, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series for $19.99 here in North America. Physically on the Switch, you can grab it for $30 to $40, and on the PS4, it's going to be about $35 to $50. The next game I would like to induct into the greatest indie games of all time is Infernax, a game that expands upon gameplay gameplay elements of 8-bit classics while having a strong identity of its own. Developed by Berserk Studio and published by the Arcade Crew, it takes influence from ambitious proto-Metroidvanias of the 8-bit era like Castlevania II: Simon's Quest, Zelda II: The Adventure of Link, and Axe Battler: A Legend of Golden Axe. It takes the ambitious potential of those titles even further by replacing their clunky gameplay with polished modern controls, quality of life improvements, better exploration, and expanded RPG elements. The result can be considered just as much of an action RPG as it is a Metroidvania, and the presentation gives the game a strong individual personality and charm. Playing as Alcidor, a knight who has returned from a crusade to find his homeland being threatened by demons, he must choose how to best address this situation. There are multiple story paths that depend upon the choices that you make, and each path includes unique abilities, bosses, and endings. While there can be some decisions that are obvious as to whether they're good or evil, that isn't always the case, and some choices will be difficult and could have unexpected consequences that may provide or take away opportunities for future side quests with certain NPCs. There are also multiple alternate characters you can play as by inputting certain names when creating a new game save file, and these will be revealed to you with different endings you get in the game. The characters have very different abilities that greatly change the gameplay style, so this adds a good amount of replayability. There's also recently been a free DLC expansion that adds another character to assist Alcidor in his journey. In single-player mode, you can switch between these two characters, and the expansion also adds a 2-player co-op mode where each player can control one or the other. With its creative and addictive gameplay, charming presentation, great character designs, high replayability, and tons of demon gore, Infernax is an excellent example of how to do something new with a retro style. It's one of my personal favorite indies and is a must-play for fans of Metroidvanias, along with retro action RPG fans. It's available digitally for PC, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series for $19.99. Physically for the Switch, you can grab it for $35 to $40, PS4 about $27 to $35. We go back to horror with this next one. We're talking about Tormented Souls, a game that caught a lot of players by surprise when it released in 2021 and quickly established itself as one of the big names in indie survival horror. Developed by Dual Effect and Abstract Digital, published by P-Cube, it hits hard from the beginning with an opening where the protagonist, Caroline Walker, heads to an old mansion that has been repurposed as a hospital to investigate a mysterious letter she receives and is soon rendered unconscious when attacked from behind. She awakens to find herself stripped naked in a bathtub filled with water with a tube forced into her mouth and a bandage over one of her eyes. When she removes the bandage, she discovers that one of her eyes has been completely removed. This makes for quite the memorable opening scene, one of my favorites, and sets the tone for what is yet to come, with a theme of body horror and strange medical experiments. Caroline will encounter monstrous creatures as she explores the hospital, and the creature design has a recurring theme of undead abominations who appear to have experienced some kind of medical torture. The gameplay is very old-school survival horror in style, with tank controls and fixed camera angles. There's an emphasis on puzzle solving and resource management, with saves being limited to consumable items that you can use in certain devices located in the hospital to record your progress. The story involves a cult which is using the hospital facilities to make monstrous creatures out of the dead. In successfully capturing the essence of what made retro survival horror so special, Tormented Souls has earned its place as being one of the best titles in indie horror, and a sequel has also been announced that may be coming out sometime this year. This one's available on PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, and the Xbox Series for $19.99. Physically, you can grab it on Switch for about $20 to $35. On PS4, it's about $18, and PS5, $19.99. Onward, developed by WayForward and published by WayForward and Arc System Works, River City Girls is a spin-off that brings new life to an old series. As part of the Kunio-kun series that has been localized as River City in Western regions, it takes the beat-em-up genre in a direction that will have an appeal beyond the genre diehards. While there have been brawlers with RPG elements, including the Kunio-kun series itself, River City Girls implements them in a much deeper way and adds a focus on exploration into the mix. This includes a leveling system, equipment that boosts stats, and items that can prevent weapons from breaking. These all provide a variety of ways in which you can play the game that best fits your playing style. You'll play as Misako and Kyoko, the girlfriends of Kunio and Riki, the heroes of the Kunio-kun series. River City Girls also has a great sense of humor in being aware of the absurdity of its premise, and it's always amusing to see how the various people in the city interact with your characters. Even cooler, there are a ton of references to other Kunio-kun games. I love that. The pixel art and synth soundtrack are a great adaptation of retro style in a modern form, and everything comes together in a way that creates some something so charming, it seems inevitable that it would become iconic. River City Girls is a phenomenal game that takes the beat-em-up genre into new territory, and I'd recommend it not only to fans of the genre, but also to fans of RPGs and action-adventure titles as well. This one's available digitally on PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One. $29.99 is the price. If you want a physical copy, then your best option is to get the combo release of River City Girls 1 and 2 that you can get for $40 on the Switch, PS4, and PS5. Salt and Sanctuary can be considered just as much of a Souls-like action RPG as it is a Metroidvania, and it excels at being both. Developed and published by Ska Studios, the game begins as an escort mission to take a princess to her future husband in a political marriage that will avoid a war, but it encounters a detour when the ship they are on is attacked by a sea monster that causes a shipwreck. Your character will awaken on a mysterious island and will begin to search to see if the princess has survived and if the important mission can still be saved. The island is strange in nature and seems to contain recreations of some of the most hostile and deadly regions of the world, and the further you progress, the more you discover that things are not as they seem, and the reality of your mission may have been much different from what you previously thought. Developer Ska Studios has previously made a name for themselves with violent games done in a distinctive style like The Dishwasher, Vampire Smile, The Dishwasher Dead Samurai, and Charlie Murder, but they sought to take things to another level with the ambitious Salt and Sanctuary and nailed the delivery. It includes multiple character classes to choose from and a large number of different weapons you can create and upgrade. This adds a ton of variety to the character building and gameplay, and also adds a great deal of replay value. In addition to the brutal Souls-like combat, there is also no map, so there are players out there who will find the challenge to be a little bit too overwhelming. However, this game is an amazing experience for those that can handle it, and hell, there are even many fan-created maps available online if you really need one. I consider Salt and Sanctuary to be an absolute must-play for those into Souls-like Metroidvanias, and it deserves all the praise it receives as one of the best examples of that style. A sequel named Salt and Sacrifice was released in 2022, and I highly recommend that one as well. It's available digitally on PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One for $17.99. There are physical releases for Nintendo Switch and PS4, but those have long been out of print and go for very high prices on the collector market. If you go seeking out one of those copies, I hope you don't have to sell a kidney to be able to afford it. Alright, developed and published by Red Hook Studios, Darkest Dungeon is a hardcore RPG with a horror theme that takes both combat and managing the well-being of characters to the extreme. You are tasked with recruiting and training members of a party who will explore dungeons and fight monsters under your command. With difficult turn-based combat and character permadeath, there is no easy task, and not only must you keep your party members alive, but you will also need to take care of their mental health. Facing off against hordes of monsters with the risk of death always being around the next corner can take a mental toll on even the most strong and brave of heroes, so you must provide them with resources and activities in their time away from the dungeons to relieve stress and help them recover their sanity. This will require recruiting additional characters so they can be swapped in and out of the active battle party and alternate between dungeon crawling and recovering. Because of the need to build up many different characters so that the risk of death or exhaustion is minimalized, a lot of grinding is involved, so a playthrough will also be a considerable time sink. With its dark themes, distinct style, and challenging but addictive and rewarding gameplay, Darkest Dungeon stood out upon its release and has built up a very loyal and enthusiastic fanbase over time. Its influence has been considerable, and quite a few indie RPGs in a similar style have come out over the years. A sequel came out last year with a very positive reception, and it's one of my personal favorite releases of 23. Darkest Dungeon, as both a game and a series, have become one of the most iconic names in indie RPGs and modern RPGs in general, and that reputation is well deserved. This one's available digitally on the PC, Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One for $24.99. You can grab it physically on the Switch and PS4 in the $35 to $40 range for a standard edition. Into the top 3 for this list now. Developed and published by Team Cherry, Hollow Knight is a game that has become the poster child for the Metroidvania genre in recent years. Love it or hate it, it is a divisive title. Some people think it's the greatest thing to ever happen to the indie scene, other people are kind of lukewarm on it. But with a mix of a visual style that is both dark and cute, hard as nails gameplay, and a melancholy atmosphere, it provides a memorable and compelling experience in my opinion that led it to becoming one of the most popular and influential games in the scene. The exploration mixes in some precision platforming at times, and access to certain areas will require a skill check in addition to the ability gating. The boss fights are as fun and engaging as they are tough, tough, and they stand out as some of the best that the Metroidvania genre has to offer. Hollow Knight's rise in popularity and sales is one of the great success stories in the indie scene, and its upcoming sequel, maybe, is one of the most eagerly anticipated games for many gamers, including myself. Though it's also a case where parts of its fanbase can be a bit on the rabid side in insisting that it's the end-all be-all of the Metroidvania genre. While having a passionate fanbase is generally a positive thing for a game, enthusiastic praise can get completely out of control, and no game can ever live up to that kind of hype. There's also a bit of backlash from those who say it's overrated because of how game journalists insist it's on another level above all other entries in the genre. I'm personally of the opinion that both those overly praising and overly criticizing Hollow Knight have a distorted view of the game, and that both of those takes are unfair and inaccurate. While no game can be the single greatest of all time, it can be your personal favorite. My take on Hollow Knight is that it's one of the best in its genre, one of the greatest games of all time, and one of my personal favorites. This one's available digitally on PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One for $14.99. The physical Switch version is about $35 to $40, same with PS4. Lies of P is our next game, a fascinating case of where a Souls-like action RPG wears its influences on its sleeves while also improving upon the mechanics of those influences, and it provides a story, aesthetic, and atmosphere that gives it a strong identity of its own. Developed and published by NeoWiz, this is a new classic in the genre that holds up in quality with the best of From Software's releases. The visual style and mechanics take a lot of influence from Bloodborne, but with a parry mechanic more similar to Sekiro. However, there is a much shorter window of time that caught many players off guard. However, the controls are actually really well implemented here. Something Lies of P quickly gained a reputation for, however, is its brutal difficulty. It's one of the more challenging games released in more recent times. However, it's not cheap or unfair in my opinion. Success relies upon learning the combat mechanics, creating a character build that fits your preferred playing style, and learning enemy attack patterns. The character's story and world building are all masterfully done, and what may seem like an absurd idea on the surface quickly becomes compelling and immersive upon experiencing it. Turning the tale of Pinocchio into a grimdark fantasy overlapping with cosmic horror might seem like a nearly impossible task for the result to turn out well, but the way this theme is executed here makes all of the elements feel like they fit together naturally, with a narrative examining the nature of life, intelligence, and emotions in a story about alchemists creating abominations in their attempts to play God. Exploring the city of Krat and its surrounding areas is a captivating experience. Seeking out items that reveal bits of lore becomes addictive, and it's worth the extra time and effort to get the full experience. Because of the intense challenge, Lies of P won't be the ideal entry into Souls-likes for newcomers, but would instead be better reserved for when you want to play one of the best the genre has to offer after you've become used to the style. It's a masterpiece in my eyes that has quickly become one of my personal favorites, and is a must-play for fans of Souls-likes. This one's available digitally on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, $59.99. Physically, you can get it for that same price on PS5 and Xbox Series X. Alright, last one. Thank you again for sticking with us for this entire list. We appreciate you greatly. Our last game is going to be Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, a very interesting sequel that manages to be more accessible than its predecessor through quality of life improvements without losing the elements of what made the original so unique and compelling. Developed and published by Miro Havernin, it takes place in the same world of the first game, but far into the future in a more modern setting. The story involves passengers on a train that mysteriously stopped outside of the city of Prehavel, and all of those remaining on the train awaken after having the same dream where a mysterious being claiming to be the servant of a god tells them they have been selected as participants in the Termina festival, where they must kill each other until one survivor remains, who will be given a reward by the god he serves. There are multiple directions the story can take depending on your choices. You must decide if you want to find a way out of the situation you've been forced into, or to play along with the rules of the festival. Some of the other participants will be available to recruit as party members, and whether you help, harm, or ignore them will impact how the story plays out. People are turning into monstrous beings with distorted bodies, known as the Moonscorched. Most of them become feral, and a few remain intelligent and are capable of rational thought. The save system is considerably different from the first game. Saving is associated with passing time in the sequel for the most part, and each day is divided into sections of morning, afternoon, and night. Passing time will happen through resting, which will also give you the opportunity to save and access a skill table where you can obtain abilities using soul stones, which are charged with the souls of defeated enemies. There are character-specific abilities that are available in a certain order, and there are also abilities that become available depending on the level of affinity you've built with a certain god. You can also obtain the abilities of participant characters by killing them and using a soul stone. Opportunities to recruit party members and NPC allies will occur during a certain time on a specific day, and these characters will eventually become moon-scorched if you don't help them. This will turn most of them into powerful bosses you'll have to fight late in the game, so how you interact with these characters can make things either easier or harder for you in the long run. While it took a few years for the series to get attention, a strong cult fan base has formed around these games, and there are many YouTube channels focused entirely on them now. The masterful blend of RPG and survival horror mechanics provides an experience with an emphasis on risk and reward that excels in creating tension and can even make feelings of dread and despair into something exciting and pleasant. There really aren't any other games that closely resemble those in the Fear and Hunger series, and this unique quality makes them feel somewhat like a genre of its own. Both are masterpieces in what they've accomplished, and the innovations in Fear and Hunger 2 Termina make me very optimistic regarding what will come next. Expansions to the game are in the works, and they may come out sometime this year. Those expansions are one of my most eagerly anticipated things in gaming for 2024, and I will cover them on I Dream of Indie Games when they're released, hopefully. While the dark themes and extreme content in this game will make it a textbook example of a niche, it's also pure gold for those with the taste and temperament to appreciate such things. This one's available on PC for $11.99, and that's gonna do it for this list, folks. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed these 10 selections in Volume 5 of the greatest indie games of all time. Be sure to head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where you can get some wonderful perks and help us continue to bring indie coverage to you. Have you played any of the games on this list, and if so, what did you think of them? Please also let us know some of the games that you consider to be the best and most influential indie games of all time down in the comments. We very much look forward to hearing from you. See you on the channel.